Every era in human history has a defining disease, and the language used around it defines the response of patients and society to that disease. The illness itself then becomes a metaphor to describe unrelated social processes and cultural phenomena that resemble the symptoms or the stigma of the disease. For example, due to the physical disfigurement that accompanies leprosy, the sick suffered humiliation and segregation, and the word leper became synonymous with an outcast or a pariah. Disease is the metaphorical source for psychological states as well. We can be lovesick. We buy things we don't need because nobody is immune to advertising. And unexceptional events are like the common cold. We talk about laughter or riots as contagious, and we draw parallels between the spreading of germs and the spreading of ideas. We use the metaphor of contagion to describe the spread of ideas within social networks in the real world and online. We also speak about viral memes and posts. And since COVID 19, we really understand what viral means. It's interesting to me that we never politicized antivirus software or claimed it infringed on our liberties. Every generation has a defining physical or psychological illness. The rise in popularity of reality television, and with it, the quest for instant celebrity, made narcissistic personality disorder the diagnosis of the moment. Then came OCD, ADD, bipolar, and borderline. Today, autistic and Asperger's are the most quoted and loosely used terms by laypersons to describe, often in a demeaning manner, the socially awkward ex spouse, the friendless child, or the abusive boss. This use of the term autism is, of course, unfair to those indeed afflicted by the condition, because when it becomes a slur, it leads to stereotyping and to the misunderstanding of the challenges and needs autistic people must face. I obviously do not use it as an insult. Autism just seems to be the most useful metaphor to describe the human condition at the start of the third decade of the 21st century. One of the most dominant manifestations of autistic behavior at the highest level of the autistic spectrum is context blindness, or katextia in Latin. I do not claim that context blindness for all humans is the same as the medically diagnosed context blindness of children with Asperger's or autism. But the descriptions of autistic behaviors often speak of a child sitting expressionless, constantly spinning the wheels of a toy car, his eyes fixed. He pays no attention when his name is called, oblivious to the situation around him. It seems to me that if we replace the toy truck with a smartphone, this is quite an accurate description of a high percentage of the world population today. Katextia affects abilities such as face perception, recognition of emotions, understanding language and communication, and problem solving. And as it turns out, many of these are affected in neurotypical people as well. A study conducted at UCLA found that digital media decreased children's ability to read other people's feelings. Social skills require practice, and we had been low on this practice for a while when the pandemic struck. We were looking at our phones an average of 96 times daily in 2019, but most of our conversations in 2020 took place behind a screen, and chances are that our ability to socialize in person have been even further compromised. With muted screens on Zoom, we have become used to an unnatural silence and absence of conversation fillers such as or Some are finding face-to-face conversations awkward and less fluid, and their online behavior leaking into their real lives. In addition, the social distancing and wearing of face masks imposed by the pandemic may turn out to have negative implications for babies and their bonding early attachment, and connections with others. It is much harder to read people's emotions behind masks, and if we can't read other people's emotions, empathy deteriorates too. The eroded contextual sensitivity that seems to be afflicting us all explains at least some of the lack of empathy we have seen around us over the past few years. Context blindness explains Donald Trump's lack of empathy. It explains how this unorthodox demagogue who challenged all the conventions of modern day politics, a brash celebrity turned politician who used unfiltered talk and defied all norms of public civility, won the presidential election in 2016, claimed it was stolen in 2020, and promises to be back in 2024. When we're blind to context, we cannot be civil, and we don't have the context, cultural or social, to serve as a guide for what is acceptable and what is not when we play a certain role in a given situation, like President of the United States. There's strong evidence all around us that we have now slipped into an unprecedented reality in most areas of life. The insurgents at the US Capitol and the rise of QAnon are not more of the same, but rather signs of a profound transformation. My argument here presumes an all-encompassing grasp of our current human condition, that digital technology has made us context blind. Context is a set of conditions involving space, time, objects, symbols, and transactions between people, culture, and reality. The conditions are functions of one another and of the media through which they are conducted, and they allow us to label situations that we find ourselves in. The conditions help us predict how others will behave and their expectations of us. Situations or context assign us roles. They tell us who we are and who are the others around us. Context helps us concentrate on what is relevant and ignore what is irrelevant and make sense of the world. And when we are context blind, we cannot. So what's making us context blind? When skills and capacities are delegated to technology, they are lost. For instance, the advent of automated airplane operations weakened pilots' ability to respond creatively in emergencies. Doctors who rely entirely on technology are increasingly losing their ability to make diagnoses based on observation. The physical exam is an almost lost art. And as Abraham Verghese half-jokingly said, if you come to our hospital missing a finger, no one will believe you until we get a CT scan, an MRI, and an orthopedic consult. The invention of writing weakened our biological memory. Rational thought was impaired by the advent of television. And the delegation of our capacity to read context to what are called contextual technologies atrophied our contextual sensitivity. Think about it. Why perform the basic arithmetic required for splitting a check or calculating the tip for a waiter at a restaurant if we can use the calculator on our phones? Why tell time by the hands of an analog watch if we can quickly look at our phones? Why remember birthdays when our calendars and social media accounts remember them for us? They even provide no effort templates to say happy birthday and move on. Why retain the ability to give instructions if we can send directions to Waze instead? When GPS decides what route is best and iTunes decides what song to play, humans forget how to contextualize. When we completely outsource all of our skills to mobile technology, location services, sensors, social media, and artificial intelligence, we stop understanding the most basic situations. To relinquish control over our decisions to contextual technology is to give up our awareness of context. Sitting with a friend at a coffee shop or with our family over dinner, we text and swipe and look at our phones instead of at them. We no longer feel insulted when people are conversing with us and they take their eyes off of ours, leaving us or putting us on hold. Lack of eye contact has become the norm in real life. Online, we're apparently uncomfortable. So, in its new iOS 13 update to FaceTime, Apple is experimenting with faking eye contact and altering our faces so that it looks we're looking directly at the other person. Self-driving cars and GPS, AI, sensors and wearables, the Internet of Things and data know everything about us, where we are, what the weather is like, where we're going, what we're looking for, and whom we're with. They can even anticipate what we're likely to do next. So they take control of our life experiences, and we stop noticing what is right before us. Context blindness is the disease of our time, and it involves three major symptoms: delusions, high conflict personality, and fragility and hypersensitivity. Some of these symptoms do, in fact, characterize people with autism. The proneness to delusions has displayed comorbidity with traits of autistic spectrum disorders. Aggression rates may be higher in individuals with autism, and upwards of 88% of autistic children experience abnormalities due to sensory sensitivities. However, the symptoms here are used as metaphors to describe the context blindness that afflicts us as a culture, or rather, as a species, in an age of contextual technologies. In this metaphorical sense, delusions manifest themselves in phenomena such as flat earthers, anti vaxxers, and global warming deniers. Like conspiracy theories generally, conspiracies around vaccines have existed since before the internet and before coronavirus, of course. But COVID 19 has provided a concentrated example of the role of social media in the spread of anti vaxxer theories. Another symptom of context blindness, as I said, is high conflict personality, and this manifests itself in phenomena such as tribalism and polarization, identity politics, and cancel culture. And another symptom is fragility and hypersensitivity that can be seen in phenomena such as trigger warnings and safe spaces. Public conversation has become exceptionally unpleasant. On social media, anything we say is bound to be greeted with nasty responses. And the constant nastiness has made people more fragile, especially young people. Facebook and Twitter are really good at spreading outrage because almost anything can be taken as an example of how dreadful the other side is if you strip it of context and hit tweet or post. So now students need protection from books, words, and ideas. The ability to contextualize is essential to distance oneself from and debate the use of words and ideas. Context-blind individuals cannot see that the word is not the thing. Thus, they cannot separate words from feelings, and the reactions are therefore signal reactions, automatic, reflexive, and emotional, and the algorithm loves it. And there's much more context-blind humans cannot see. We cannot see that we're driving our own evolution with our technology. We have redesigned our world, become an even more domesticated and smarter species, but also generated explosions in allergies, obesity, autism, and global warming. This summer, it became clear that we have pushed the planet past its final tipping point. It was hotter in the eastern United States than in Pakistan. London got more than a month's worth of rain in a few minutes. There were unprecedented rains followed by deadly flooding in central China and whole areas of Germany, drought in North America, and wildfires in the subarctic. California was burning again. Temperatures in Canada reached 120 degrees. Finland and Ireland experienced tropical heat, and the Siberian tundra was ablaze. This is global warming we can feel. With our instruments, our media, our technology, we have mastered more and more of our environment and guided it towards our own purposes. The human footprint on our planet should be evident to all, but it is not because we're context blind. In his book, Amazing Ourselves to Death, Lance explains that the key to avoiding technological dystopia is context. that we need to find the appropriate contexts for the specific purposes we have in mind, the appropriate medium for the kinds of communication we wish to engage in, the appropriate environment for living a fully human life. I agree, of course, but I fear it may be too late. Sorry, and thank you very much.